Hi, and welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager. I'm joined again today by special guest host Hayley Ringle, my long-time childhood best friend. Welcome to the show, Hayley.
Hello, glad to be here again.
Yes. And for regular viewers of the show, you can keep on tuning in to see what outfit Hayley will wear next time she's on the show, and what earrings. First of all, before we start, you have to show the audience what your earrings are and explain what they are.
So these are Barbie furniture, which are surprisingly light, so which is hard when you have big earrings. So this is a Barbie TV, and this is a Barbie speaker.
Yeah, there you go. Just
So
missing Barbie.
yes, I'm Barbie.
Your Barbie, yes. The ideal one, I would say.
Yes, the ideal Barbie.
Yes. So, we decided for this episode to look at some of the Oscar nominees. Of course, by the time this airs, all the winners will have long been announced, but we wanted to play catch up. And so, this was a good excuse for Haley and me to catch up on all the Oscar nominees that we hadn't yet seen that were
Definitely.
available on streaming services. So, we'll kick it off with our first movie, which is Better Days from Hong Kong. This is about a teenage girl who enlists the help of a young man to protect her from bullies as she prepares for her college entrance exams. So in China and in Hong Kong, apparently there's this like really intense college exam that goes on for like 9 hours that basically determines your entire future, these tests. So it's a very high pressure atmosphere. And on top of that, this particular girl, for really no reason, there's nothing, particularly odd or outcasty about her, but she's being picked on by this other group of girls and some really horrific bullying. And then she finds this other outsider, this young man who kind of lives on his own and enlists his help. Now, this film really came out of nowhere. Unlike some of the other foreign language nominees for the Oscars, I had not heard of this one, and so probably would have totally missed it if it wasn't for the fact that it's Oscar nominated. I was a little disappointed because it edged out some other foreign and international films that I liked a lot better that weren't nominated this last year. I'm always a little bit wary when a movie starts with a coda like this many people per year are bullied and this is a worldwide problem. We must stop it. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. It's a message movie. What I think the movie does really well is establish the relationship between the young girl and the guy. And so they have a really nice dynamic. It becomes a little bit of a like, it became more of like a movie about their romance than I was expecting as it went on,
Yeah.
and less about the bullying, perhaps. And I also felt like the second half seemed a little long. I was getting a little bit like, okay, how long is this thing going?
Mhm.
So curious what you thought about it.
So yeah, it really turned into kind of this thriller, romantic comedy, but also the girl, she was dealing with so much, not just with school and with the bullies, but she also lived alone. Her mom, she had a single mom, and her mom had a job where she was like in another, city for a long time. So she was kind of having to deal with all this. I think she's supposed to be 17 or 18, all by herself. So you just feel for her. I did think the film was too long, but I love the two main characters so much, and um, you know, I thought the story was so interesting. I have always kind of gravitated towards the underdogs, in my life, and so I have seen how mean girls can be, and it's crazy that these girls, seemingly for no reason, are just
Yeah.
so enthralled in like making this young girl's life miserable, and not just her, but at the beginning of the film, there's another girl who, I don't know if it's, who dies. It's kind of how the film starts, and
Hmm.
it's kind of seem as, oh well, this is happening again, so it didn't, obviously people were upset, but it kind of seemed like this happens a lot, which is really sad. And you just feel for these kids who are, not only they're so young, but having to, this test, could change their life, but yet they're having to deal with so much, and it just seems so, especially with the pandemic, I think a lot of people are dealing with so much stress. And this
Hmm.
was like such a stressful movie, as you kind of go along with these two characters.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought that up, rooting for the underdog. That must be why we're friends. No. Hey, you and I actually met over because of bowling, sort of. So I don't know if you remember that, but when we became friends in the eighth grade, Haley helped me stand up to some bullies in my life. So that's actually what we bonded over. Not to this extent; they weren't that was what was sort of shocking in this film. These films aren't. This wasn't the bullying like the kind that I encountered when I was in school, which was mostly verbal taunting and things like that. I mean, this is very violent bullying, and some pretty harsh
Yes.
stuff happens to people in this movie. I
Hmm.
don't know how much this is based on what is actually happening over in Hong Kong and China, but I would imagine in general the stress of that whole entrance exam coupled with the kind of very competitive aspect of the culture would be, they mentioned, I think, in real life that suicide rates are really high, and it's a really
Hmm.
bad problem. It's a lot of pressure to put on a 17-year-old. Like, this one test will determine your entire future. So I did
Yeah.
appreciate that aspect. I just thought it dragged a little bit, and especially in the
It
second
definitely
half.
was too long. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was about 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I know not just in China, but I know that even in Arizona, we're having a lot of high school kids who are unfortunately, dealing with suicide. So I think, especially with the pandemic, this is happening a lot to younger kids. And,
Hmm.
I can't even imagine how these kids are kind of dealing, with not being with their friends and being home. And I mean, I would have been a mess if I had to be home and not with my friends.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so it's kind of interesting it came out now because I see a lot of parallels to the pandemic, dealing with the stress and having kind of absent parents. And, they both were dealing with absent parents. And I really
Yeah.
liked Jackson Yee, the main character. He's in a boy band. So
Oh,
he's kind
really?
of a pop star turned actor.
He's very good looking. He has a
Yeah,
good screen presence.
and I thought he was, fantastic. She found him at just the right time because she needed to protect her, and he kind of filled that role. And I think he found her at the right time because he needed someone to connect to, and he needed a change in his life. You know, and
Right.
so they were, kind of two characters that are completely different, but they got together and it just worked. And so I love that.
Yeah, so it sounds like you really liked this one, maybe more than me even. So,
Yeah, I mean, I just saw it, and so I think it's fresh in my mind. I definitely think it needed to be cut, but I think I love the two characters so much, and I identified with the story that I enjoyed it more.
yeah.
And one of my favorite scenes, Angela, is near the end where they are just looking at each other, and they're crying and then laughing. I mean, that was like that was it for me. It's so weird. Like, some of the scenes to me are just the emotions of people.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Call Me by Your Name, Timothy Chalamet at the very end of that film. I think I could have stared and looked at him for a half an hour of him just looking into the fire, just looking at the expressions of his face. And that's what that reminded me of. So I really
Yeah,
enjoyed
just like
that
a
scene.
really human moment, basically, that you're
Yeah.
really connecting to emotionally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some positives of it. And I'm always happy to see, that's one of the things I love about award shows in general, not just the Oscars, but that it brings movies that people otherwise wouldn't see. It causes people to check out some of these movies because I felt like this one really went under the radar.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
okay. So, next one's yours, I think.
Okay, so the next one is My Octopus Teacher, which is a Netflix movie, and this is an Oscar-nominated documentary. So it's a beautifully shot, a thrilling story. And why are my notes here? I have my notes. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So director and cinematographer Craig Foster forges an unusual friendship with an octopus living in a South African kelp forest, learning as the animal shares the mysteries of her world. The octopus is a female. And so this Oscar nominated documentary is beautifully shot. It's a thrilling story as Craig, who is the director and cinematographer, he visits this octopus daily for a year in free dives, which means that you're diving without any oxygen tanks. And so he actually didn't direct this. It was directed and written by Pippa Ehrlich and James Reed, but the film centers around him as he does these free dives. And it was kind of interesting how it was filmed because um, a lot of the footage is this underwater footage, but it was also kind of him talking about the experience. And this was kind of therapy for him as he reconnects with nature in this kind of informal study of this particular area and learning about this octopus, this underwater wonder. And he watches as she covers herself with shells to hide from predators. She's attacked by sharks. And loses one of her limbs and learns to trust him enough because he literally sees her every day for a year. And so he's able to hold her. And it's a soothing, thrilling, emotional film One of the quotes that I loved is, "She made me realize just how precious wild places are."
Yeah, so you really liked it?
I did.
Yeah. I liked the movie. The parts I liked the most was the underwater footage with the octopus because I realized like, wow, as I was watching, I was thinking, I really don't know anything about octopuses. And so you learn a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, not just about this specific one, obviously, but about octopuses in general, like how amazingly intelligent they are and all these defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
And the film opens with this sort of mystery where she is covered in all of these shells and she almost looks like an art piece or a sculpture and then all of a sudden he sees her burst out of them and he's like, "What is this? I've never seen this before." He even researches it on the internet and never understood. He couldn't
Yeah.
find anything about an octopus doing this behavior, and so that's what sort of starts his intrigue. And I liked the fact that it also highlighted this very, it's like hyper localized really for the ocean, which is enormous, right? An enormous,
Hmm.
biodiversity part of nature. But he keeps going to the same spot every day for a year. And he even says,
Hmm.
people ask him, "Well, why don't you go to different parts of the ocean?" Well,
Yeah.
I no, because I wanted to see this one area and how it's changing over time. And it includes her. This is like her home, her neighborhood, right? So
Hmm.
I loved that aspect of it. The parts that I was less excited about and what, keeps me from giving it 4 stars was sort of his pontificating as he's sitting at the table about, he was sort of basically going through this midlife crisis and this kind of helped him get over this. And, he's like, "I was overworked and stressed and nature helped me." I was just like, yeah, ho hum, whatever. So I was less sympathetic to that part of it, like the human aspect, basically. And I also just kind of wondered, like, even though he was trying not to intrude, I just wondered, especially with the whole story with the octopus and the shark, how much his presence might have actually changed some of the behavior of what was going on down there. But regardless, I think it's still an important message, especially now, with the climate crisis, that people need to get more in tune with nature and appreciate wildlife and stop viewing animals as dumb because these creatures are magnificently intelligent
Well,
and
we're animals.
yeah, exactly.
And
And
Angela, it sounds like you need to get out in nature more.
sounds like I need to. Yeah, that's
Yes.
probably true. But I've always thought, animals are really, really smart. So that doesn't surprise me, but it was sort of amazing some of the things, especially with the shells, that she had the ability to pick up thousands of shells with one swoop to like cover herself in this
If
kind
only
of
we all had
emergency
8
shelter.
arms.
Yeah, exactly. And just, some of the things about how they have like thousands of babies, but only a few live, and there was just all sorts of things which you could see in a, natural, like some sort of other National Geographic documentary, I suppose. But I don't think you get that level of specificity because he was going to the same place every day. I liked that aspect of it.
And that's why I think it was more the dichotomy of him and what he was dealing with in life and what this octopus kind of did for him in this year.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize, instead of going to a therapist and paying thousands of dollars, sometimes just go take a walk and be by yourself, and
Yeah.
kind of, and that was therapy for him, is going on this dive and really being inside of himself and just exploring the world, you know, and
My
that's what I
animals
liked
have
about the film.
definitely animals have definitely been therapeutic for me. I can't sort of
Mhm.
imagine not having them during the pandemic. And you've got little ones now too, which
I
I was
do.
hoping
Yes.
would make an appearance on camera somehow if we can arrange it, because she just has kittens, and as everybody knows, kittens are the most adorable thing on the face of the earth.
And they're
And I don't
also
want to hear
crazy, which is why my door is closed.
yeah, I'm also crazy, but I know I'll hear from all the puppy people out there, but I'm sorry, there's no competition. And I like dogs, but no kittens, hands down cutest. Okay.
Yeah,
So
we've only had them for a week, so they're still in their hellion stage. So they're
But I
great, but
saw
I
some
definitely
photos.
wanted to.
I saw some cuddle photos. They were
Oh
using it as
yes,
a couch, so they've already
they
gotten used
definitely love
to
to cuddle.
mama
Yes.
couch already. So
Yeah.
okay, so how many stars for you on that one?
Out of 4,
Yeah.
I would say 3.5.
Okay. Yeah. 3 stars
Yeah.
for me, but I definitely am glad I saw it. So
Yeah, definitely. And so the next film is Over the Moon, which is an Oscar nominated animated musical on Netflix. And young girl Fei Fei struggles with her mother's death and her father's new love. So she builds a rocket ship and blasts off, hoping to meet a mythical moon goddess she heard so much about from her mother's favorite stories about a long lost lover. So this is directed by 2 Disney kind of, very experienced Disney animators, Glen Keane, who was involved in Beauty and the Beast and Tangled, and John Cars, who was in Tangled, The Incredibles, Monsters Inc. and voiced by kind of a who's who of very well-known Asian actors, including John Cho and Sandra Oh, Ken Jeong, and Margaret Cho. I thought the story was beautifully animated, but it veered off in such a weird way. At times, it was kind of hard to follow, and it doesn't have as much heart or storytelling prowess as a Studio Ghibli film, as maybe some experience as some editing as a Disney film. I love animated movies, and I did like this, and I love that the main characters it was an Asian girl, and I wish I liked it more, but it kind of just went off in all these weird little ways that just seemed really disconnected.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the thing I liked about it most was the look, actually. I thought it was some gorgeous animation, and these are obviously
Hmm.
skilled, talented former Disney
Yes.
animators, but it had this gorgeous the color palette and the way they infused, like the Asian iconography and especially the moon, and they just had some beautiful colors and look to it. I think where it faltered a little bit was the story and the music. It felt like it was sometimes when they launched into song, I was like, oh, this is like Frozen light, like but without as good of songs. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, what Pixar does so well that so many other animation companies have a hard time with is story and character. And you just I felt for the young girl and I liked the character, but I didn't get as into it as I often do with like Pixar animated movies where where the story is really interesting and maybe has some like existential. It almost feels like old Disney, because you start with like the death of a parent, and which it was like every Disney,
I
there used to be like
I
such a
hate these
trope.
Disney movies that start with a death. That's
I
my
know,
main
and this
problem
one
with Up.
started like that, but it felt
Yeah.
like almost like an old Disney movie in that way. But although actually
Hmm.
on the new Disney movies they have it too. But and so I just felt like, oh, we've kind of seen this story before, so it didn't try to do anything really unusual, and especially with those fantastical elements with the moon and everything. I couldn't help but think what a Japanese animator like a Miyazaki could have done with the same type of story.
Exactly.
Like
Yep.
really just going crazy with the fantastical elements. Like you're on the moon, you can create anything you want, and it didn't kind of go where I'd hoped it would once she got to the moon, especially. So I would probably give it 3 stars, but I think compared to some of the other animated nominees, particularly Soul and actually Onward,
Onward.
which I actually just watched recently and was surprised how much I loved it. Actually, I felt like that one because it came out when COVID first hit, got buried, and so I actually liked that one a lot more than I expected
Another
to.
movie
So
about death too.
it is, but it's so funny. The whole thing with the father not having a top half, like they used that so well. And again, because it's Pixar, they get into some of these like existential kind of like philosophical modes of like, what would you do if you had a chance to see your parent, but only for 2 minutes? Or
Hmm.
what are the things that you really value? And I don't know, I just love that. And also the kind of the fact that people weren't valuing their history and they'd forgotten their history, which I think we do a lot. So I think
Yeah.
there was just, there was all this deepness to it that I think was missing from the screenplay in a movie like this. So, but I'm excited, if Netflix decides to like take on Disney or whatever by hiring some of these people, it could be another great, way to go with animated films.
Yeah, it was really trippy. Like I feel like it could be kind of one of those like classics, kind of like a cult thing where people are like, yeah, let's smoke weed and watch this movie, because it was very trippy.
I think so, but didn't you feel like once they got to the moon, it could have been even, I don't know, there were aspects of it I thought when the diva, the moon goddess comes out and she sings her big song, I just thought they could have done even more with that, I felt like. If they're going to
And the
go full
songs were
on,
not good.
no,
I
the songs
mean, and
weren't good.
even
And that's,
even her singing. I know that that character is in Hamilton, and so I'm surprised. I was like, oh, like some of the notes. I don't know. I didn't really like the songs that
it was
much.
really high stink singing. Yeah, I didn't care for the songs
Yeah,
and they weren't memorable. I didn't remember a single one after it was done. That's why I called it
yeah.
Frozen like, because some of the songs remind me of that style of the songs from Frozen, but there weren't any memorable ones. So
But
anyway,
I mean, I
so
do want to. I do want to. I love that it was about a female. She's, obviously smart because she, builds this
builds a
rocket,
rocket.
which I think is really cool. And I think it's good to have these types of movies to kind of inspire girls to get interested in a STEM career. So I really did like that.
Yeah, I think it was nice to have a good, strong female character, and it's not all about
Hmm.
like the love relationship like it often is in like Disney princess movies or whatever. I just wish the story had been a little stronger, but I agree. And
And
I mentioned the animation was fantastic. So
yeah, and the funny thing is her new kind of stepbrother is kind of the dopey guy. So I thought that was kind of funny too, or the dopey
yeah,
kid.
the
Yeah.
dopey kid, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we'll move on to our next movie, which is The Mole Agent, also Oscar-nominated film and for the documentary for 2020. So this is about an older man who was hired by a private investigator to look into abuse at a retirement home in Chile. Now, that is the premise of the movie, and even the marketing of the movie really takes off in this whole idea of a private investigator. In the marketing, he's got a magnifying glass, and the movie has this the music, the score is sort of like a hyped up Mission Impossible type, detective type thing. But that's not actually what the movie is about. The movie is actually a look at what happens to people when they get older in our society and how they are discarded and often forgotten in places like nursing facilities, long-term care facilities, and retirement homes. This really struck home for me as someone who works in social services. And of course, during the pandemic, we've seen horrible losses at nursing facilities and retirement homes across the country from people, older folks who live in these places. And so it was interesting to me because it goes in with this premise of investigating abuse, and really he doesn't find anything. I know I'm giving it away, but he's not finding anything, and you probably
He's
could
not a
easily.
mole either.
He's not really a mole, because they know who he is. I mean, they don't know that that's what he's looking for when he's there, right? But he ends up just becoming friends with a lot of the people there and developing relationships and really asking them questions and caring about them in a way that their own families have forgotten to do. And so you meet different people, like the woman who wasn't sure. She's starting to have some memory loss, and she thinks it's been years since she's seen her daughters, but she's not sure. And he tries to connect her with them. And there's just all these amazing people in these places, and you just remember, that what this is what we do to old people as a society. And
Mhm.
he is the same age as these people. He's not better or worse than them. He's just lucky in that, he's able to live independently. He's still healthy, and he's really close with his daughter, who is
Well,
really terrified of him going into this place.
he has a large family. I think he
Yeah, he
has
has a
three
large
kids.
family, and
So
they
yeah,
and not only does he have the large family, he's actually connected with them. They care about
yeah,
him. They don't want him to
yeah.
go into the place to begin with, so it's a different dynamic. And so he's lucky, really. That's really what it comes down to. And so, we see this every day in our system. There's people that don't see their families don't come to visit them for years once they go into a place like this. And it seems like the people are well cared for. The place is a relatively nice place. It doesn't look seedy or like there's anything really bad going on there. But
Mhm.
people are lonely, and that's really what the film's about. It's a little bit more of a downer than I was expecting because the marketing of it was so focused on the detective, kind of like he's out. It almost I thought it was going to be almost a comedy kind of documentary, and it's not at all.
Mhm. Yeah, I thought it was interesting because the premise is they're looking for somebody that's between 80 and 90 who is good with technology, which I thought was okay, most, and then who's independent. So I thought that was funny at the very beginning where they're doing the different interviews trying to find. And even when they choose him, he's obviously not good with technology because he has no idea how to use his phone. And so I thought that was really funny. And yeah, it does become kind of a therapy session for he becomes everyone's best friend. He's one of the few men that live at the facility, and he's, rather good looking. So a lot of the women,
Yeah, they
like
congregate
him.
around him.
And so he, I thought it was interesting when it's his birthday and they have this huge party. It's like a celebrity is coming, and and everybody just tells him like how much they love him. And you kind of feel sad because he is only, I think he was there for 3 months. And so, you know, it would be interesting to kind of do a follow-up to see what happened, because when these women find out that he really wasn't there, you know, he was
Yeah,
kind of there under false pretense.
right.
And
Would they
and you
feel
could,
betrayed?
yeah, and you could tell that he really formed relationships with these women and he was sad to go, you know. And
Right.
so
Although I
it
think he
was
was glad not to live there anymore, but I
oh
think
yeah. I think he kind of felt like he was getting sucked in. And he's like, I don't want to be like these people. I can still live independently. I still have, family that wants to talk with me. And I think it started to depress him a little bit,
mhm,
and because he realized, he's like, this isn't the problem. Why am I investigating? The whole pretense is he was there investigating supposedly a woman who the daughter thought that she was being not cared for. And he's like,
right,
that's not the reason at all. And so I
right.
thought it was interesting for what he found, what he tried. He was kind of an advocate for these people, and it kind of turned into, I thought, a really touching story.
Yeah, again, more of like a humanistic look at what it means to be human and our connection to each other and how people need people and they get lonely and
Yeah.
people feel abandoned by their families. And it's definitely relevant. I mean, this happens. We see it all the time. Abuse also happens, so it's interesting that he didn't find any because he could have easily gone to another facility and saw horrible things depending on where you go. But that
Yeah.
ends up not being what the movie's about, even though that's the pretense. And really, he's investigating this because a daughter who hasn't come to visit her mother, but she wants to know what's really going on at the facility, hires this private investigator. And at the end, he
Yeah.
says, if she wants to know what's going on with her mother, she should go visit her mother. Okay, her mother would
Hmm.
like to see her, and I thought, wow, that just hit the nail on the head right there to me.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really powerful. I just felt like they decided to go with this kind of what I would call gimmicky marketing because they thought that would pull people in. It took me a while to adjust to what the movie was actually about. It was probably halfway through, but I thought, I don't think this is at all what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, you
So,
were really I think even, to the end, you're like, okay, what's gonna happen? Like you're expecting something more, even though
mhm.
it was a documentary. And I think, some of the reviews I read, that's what it said, that you were expecting, but you should just kind of go along
Go
for
with
the
it.
ride. And this is
Yeah.
a documentary. There's
He's
really
also
no
not a very good
surprise
investigator.
ending.
Yeah, he's also not a very good investigator in terms of like he's not actually doing his reports or seeming to find anything. He's just like sitting there chatting with the women. So yeah, no, I think
Well,
it's true.
that's not his background. He's just a regular guy who was kind
Yeah,
of,
no.
filled out, an ad and, Craigslist or whatever,
Didn't you feel like right from the beginning, though, it shows how these older folks are wanting to show value because it shows the private investigator doing the interviews, and tons of men in their 80s apply for this job
Mhm.
because they were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, we never see advertisements for jobs for people our age. We love to,
Yeah.
I want to do something. This sounds great." So they're just excited to contribute, to do something.
Mhm.
It's just like people want to just toss people out when they get to a certain age, and it's like they're still
Yeah.
of value. They're still people. So,
Yeah. And I
yeah,
know, Angela, you and I both come from a reporting background, and that's happened in journalism. They pushed out these, seasoned reporters who make a lot of money because they want to hire some young people who just graduated. And, these people, they're not ready to retire. They want to continue working, and it's ridiculous. They're like forced. And I think that's how a lot of professions are. A lot of
yeah,
times when you retire, you want to continue working, you want to continue, contributing to society, and you don't
yeah.
want to be left alone in a retirement community, not
Right, people
not
want
thought
to just
of.
keep doing things, and it may not be
Exactly.
a job, but doing something. So, well, we
Yeah.
have to wrap up, but it was so great having you again, Haley. So, if you had one
Thank
movie out of
you.
the four we reviewed to recommend, which one would it be? Not to put you on the spot, but what would be your
Oh,
pick for the week?
geez. I think My Octopus Teacher.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
great. Okay, well, as always, thank you again, Haley, for joining us. And you can check out
Thank you.
our reviews on our website at realfilmsnobs.com. We're on Twitter and Facebook. We're on CC Media in Salem, Scan TV in Silverton, Corvallis Access Media, KMUZ Radio, and now KMWV Radio. I'd like to thank, as always, our fantastic crew, including the wonderful Brad Wortman, our sponsors, and of course, Haley for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Have a great day and great movies.